There's a heist going on during the Elm, a riot in 1992, and a father and son get caught in the middle of it. Luckily, the dad is a badass, and he ends up giving the thieves way more than they bargained for. This is the 2024 movie, 1992. The movie starts with the main character, Mercer, getting a phone call from his lawyer where he talks about having shared custody of his son Antoine after his divorce. Mercer goes into his son's room and wakes him up for school. Then we cut to a guy named Riggin talking to his buddy Copeland about doing a job. Copeland shares his displeasure about working with Riggin's dad on the job, but he agrees and says this is his last job. Then we go back to Mercer making breakfast for Antoine, and he complains about his dad not letting him have any freedom, unlike when he's with his mom and grandma. Mercer gives him a pep talk and says he's going to be okay. Then he warns Antoine to come straight home from school because things might get crazy today. Antoine starts complaining. Mercer talks some sense into him, and he leaves for school. While Mercer watches him leave, the scene cuts to Riggin meeting his dad and his brother Dennis, and they all get in a car and drive off. We also see Mercer driving, and he stops at a convenience store to get something. While he's doing that, two gang members walk into the store, acting all gangsters and scaring everyone. Then they start threatening the cashier over a pack of cigarettes, so Mercer steps in and tells him to watch his mouth. The kid pulls out a firearm and points it at him. And that's how you know this man is a legend. The dude wasn't fazed, even with the Glock pressed to his head. Then another guy walks in and tells the boys to stand down, and this new guy is scared as hell. He is like, "Do you know who this man is? He's the OG Merc. Don't mess with him." Apparently, Mercer used to run the streets before he went to prison, so he has a lot of street cred. So the kids stand down and Merc walks out of the store. As he gets in his car, the guy from the store walks up and asks why he's not been hearing from Mercer. Mercer says he's been laying low and bids him farewell. It's obvious that Mercer doesn't want anything to do with that life. Then we see Riggin driving up to a metalworking factory called Pluton Metals. He tells his dad about the place and how they have $10 million worth of platinum, one of the rarest metals on the planet. The only problem is they're in a fortified safe that has steel barriers that lock up if anyone tries to rob it. He continues to detail the security and how they're going to rob it. Riggin even has one of the workers on the inside as an informant. The dad says the job is good, but the security is too tight, and he doesn't want to do it, so they drive off. And as they do, Mercer drives in. Turns out Mercer works in the plant. He checks in and meets his friend Joe, who works security at the plant. They laugh and talk about basketball, and then they watch on the news a report about an ongoing trial of 4 police officers who beat up an unarmed black man. Joe, who used to be a police officer, says if the jury doesn't give a justifiable verdict to the racist cops, there's going to be pandemonium in the streets. Mercer agrees and he goes back to work. Over at Riggin's house, his brother Dennis observes that he is angry at his dad for not doing the job. Riggins concurs that he's angry at his dad for a number of reasons, mostly because his dad is a giant SOB. His brother tries to cheer him up, indicating that they're really close. Then we watch Antoine get back home, as the news reporter declares that the jury ruled that cops were guilty of only one crime, despite the number of charges that were laid against them. We see a lot of people hearing the news, and a lot of them were unhappy to hear it, and thus began the LA riots of 1992. We see people protesting the police in a rather violent manner. Antoine goes outside his house and sees people expressing themselves. And not long after that, shots get fired. While all that is going on, Riggin calls his dad, and they both agree that the security at Pluton Metals is going to be reduced due to the riots. So they're going to carry out the heist. Over at Pluton Metals, the boss calls all his employees and tells them to close early due to the riots and go be with their families. That's when Riggin's informant calls him and tells him that the plant is closing early. So Riggin and his brother start getting ready. They both drive to the Copeland neighborhood to meet his wife, who is 6 months pregnant. Copeland meets them up and tells his wife that he will be back by 10, and he tells her to stay inside. They kiss and say goodbye. Gonna be really sad if anything happens to Copeland. Mercer meets his buddy at the vending machine, and he asks him if he can bring Antoine to the plant for the night due to the riots because they live in the heart of the hoods, and it's not going to be safe for them. Joe agrees. Riggin and his team meet up with their dad at a warehouse. Their dad is with 2 other guys, Titus and Murphy. Riggins doesn't like those guys, and he asks his dad to send them home. His dad says no, that they make him feel warm and safe. Then we see Mercer driving through the heart of the riot until he arrives at his neighborhood. He goes upstairs, but he doesn't see Antoine, so he goes looking for him. Meanwhile, the riot in the city keeps escalating as Riggin and his group drive to the site. They arrive at Pluton Metals posing as delivery guys. Riggin tases the security at the entrance. They go into the building, drive up to the loading docks, and enter the building. Joe is at the vending machine, and while he's picking up a snack, the group steps into the hallway. They lock eyes, and Riggin tries to get everyone to calm down. Joe tells them to find somewhere else to rob and immediately reaches for his weapon. That's when Murphy points and shoots him. He falls flat, and Riggin gets pissed. He takes his weapon and points it at Murphy, and soon they guys start pointing at each other. Riggin's dad calms everyone down and says they should focus on getting the money. Dennis is already panicking. Murphy goes to erase the surveillance tapes, and the rest of them head for the safe. Back in the streets, Mercer is looking for Antoine. He meets up with his gangster buddy from earlier, and the guy promises to help him find Antoine. Then he hands Mercer a weapon and tells him to join the riots, but Mercer refuses. Over at the plant, the crew arrives at the safe. Riggins gets a forklift to bring in their supplies from the van. They get to work and start drilling into the safe. In the heart of the riot, Antoine throws a rock into a store and watches as people start looting, but he stands and stares at what he's done. Mercer finds him and forces him away from the crowds. While Copeland is drilling into the safe, under the old man's supervision, Joe, who was shot but still breathing, manages to crawl into the security and activates the alarm. Immediately, the steel barriers above start closing in on the safe. As a way of quick thinking, Riggin gets in the forklift in order to use the forks to hold up the barriers. He drives fast and tells everyone to get out of the way, but Copeland isn't fast enough. As the lift crashes up to the safe and holds up the barriers, one of the tires slides on his legs and breaks into pieces. Damn, your poor wife. I'm not going to lie. This scene was hard to watch, especially when you hear Copeland screaming. Riggin suggests moving the forklift a little bit, but his dad says no, and Murphy takes out the key of the forklift. Riggin starts to get pissed, and Copeland, in his agony, says that his leg is gone and tells them to cut it off. Meanwhile, the alarm at the plant notifies the police, and a chopper gets sent to check out the place. Then we cut to Mercer and Antoine driving through the town. Antoine tries to get out, but Mercer makes him sit still. Antoine starts complaining about the police and the racism of their day. Mercer does his best to calm him down and tells him to think before he acts. This was probably the most touching part of the movie yet. At the plant, Titus and Murphy turn off the alarms and they make sure Joe is gone for good. Mercer and his son drive up to a sketchy street, and there they find a white couple getting robbed by two gangsters. Mercer tells his son to stay in the car. He tells the thieves to stop harassing the couple, and before they could even figure out what's going on, Mercer beats the crap out of all of them. I mean, this man was straight up invincible, and Antoine was in the car, going, "Damn, my dad is the coolest." Mercer tells the couple to get out of there. He goes back into his car and tells Antoine to put his seatbelt on. The boy hurriedly obeys. Over at the plant, Dennis tries to hydrate Copeland, as they have already cut off his leg. The team manages to finish drilling into the safe, and Riggin starts applying explosives to the drilled section. While they do that, a chopper comes and starts circling the compound. The team turns off their lights and tries not to make a sound. The chopper decides that the plan is all clear and decides to go surveil somewhere else in the city. Mercer and Antoine keep on driving, and they arrive at a police checkpoint. They start questioning them. Mercer says he's going to work and hands over his license and registration. Meanwhile, a white family drives up to the checkpoint, and the policeman lets them pass without so much as a question. Antoine starts calling out the BS, but it doesn't change anything. The police start suspecting them of carrying stolen property in their trunk. They hold both of them up, handcuff Antoine, and point a weapon at Mercer's face. When the trunk was cleared, they let them off with a warning. Antoine starts crying and complaining again, and Mercer tells him to be cool. At the plant, the team manages to blow up the safe and access the platinum, and the old man starts rejoicing. Dennis, still panicking, decides to go wash off Copeland's blood from his hands. Mercer and Antoine arrive at the plant. Antoine goes to use the bathroom. There he meets Dennis washing his hands. Dennis then holds him up at gunpoint. Mercer goes into Joe's office and sees Joe's body on the floor. He realizes what's going on and grabs a revolver from Joe's drawer. As he leaves the room, he sees Murphy and Titus. They start shooting, and he gets shot in his arm and drops his revolver. He runs into the bathroom to look for his son, but he doesn't find him. He runs into another warehouse in the compound and turns off the lights. Then he hides as Murphy and Titus go looking for him. He grabs a steel pipe and beats Titus up. He runs outside and sees Riggin pulling in the van. He knocks him unconscious and takes his weapon. He also disables the vehicle. Over at the safe, the old man is done loading up the loot when Dennis brings Antoine in. He takes Antoine's wallet, which has his address and credentials. He interrogates Antoine, and Antoine tells him that he came looking for his dad, but he couldn't find him. Meanwhile, Copeland is on the floor crying in pain, which annoys the old man. On the other side of the compound, Mercer has Riggin tied up and interrogates him as well. So Riggin tells him where the rest of them are. He goes there, and he watches as the old man promises to let Antoine go. But Copeland keeps screaming, so the old man shoots him. Guess he won't be seeing his wife tonight. The old man tells Antoine to leave and to keep his mouth shut because he knows where he lives. As Antoine is leaving, Titus and Murphy walk in and tell the old man about Mercer. So the old man holds Antoine hostage to use as leverage against Mercer. They head back to the van and notice that the rotor, as well as Riggin, is missing. They tell the old man as Dennis starts worrying about Riggin. Mercer notices a chopper and tries to signal it to stop, but fails. Behind him, Murphy attacks and they get into a fight. Thankfully, Mercer manages to take him down. Quite literally, he falls into the building where the rest of the team is held up. Then Mercer tells Riggin about his dad shooting Copeland. Riggin is pissed and tells Mercer his dad is a heartless SOB. The old man takes Antoine to the Plant's P, a system, and tells Mercer to bring Riggin and the rotor to the docks. Otherwise, he will end Antoine. Riggin tells Mercer that he's going to help him. Over at the dock, what remains of the crew load up the van. Mercer brings and hands over the rotor, which Titus installs. But pretty soon, a fight breaks out and bullets start flying. Riggin and Dennis get into the back of the van while Mercer and Antoine stay up front. But sadly, Dennis gets shot and Riggin starts to panic. The old man and Titus hotwire Mercer's car and start pursuing. It's a heavy car chase, but Dennis passes away during the process. Riggin, in his rage, starts shooting at his dad, and he gets shot, but he manages to take out Titus. Mercer loses control of the vehicle, and the van somersaults, with platinum spraying everywhere. Riggin crawls out of the vehicle, and he is on the floor. His dad drives up to the wreck, steps out, and apologizes for failing as a father, and then shoots Riggin. He notices Mercer crawling out of the driver's seat, and as he is about to shoot him, Antoine shoots him from behind. The young boy starts crying, realizing what he's done. Mercer consoles him. They get into his car, and they drive off. Wonder what's going to happen to all that platinum. End of the movie.